To Kill a Mockingbird is told by Jean-Louise Finch, known as Scout, who looks back on her childhood in the small southern town of Macomb, Alabama, during the 1930s. The story unfolds slowly, like a memory, showing how a child's innocent world collides with adult cruelty, injustice, and moral courage. Scout does not begin by understanding everything she sees, but, as events unfold, both she and the reader learn what it means to stand for what is right in a deeply unjust society. Macomb is a tired, dusty town where life moves slowly and traditions are rarely questioned. It is the time of the Great Depression, so many families struggle to survive. People are judged not by who they are but by their family name, skin color, and social position. Scout tells us that Macomb is a place where there was nowhere to go, nothing to buy, and no money to buy it with, which immediately sets the mood of stagnation and hardship. Scout lives with her older brother Yim and their father Atticus Finch. Their mother died when Scout was very young, so Atticus raises them alone. He is a lawyer, calm and thoughtful, very different from the other men in Macomb. He does not drink, does not shout, and does not believe in violence. Scout notes early that Atticus is feeble in the eyes of other men because he does not hunt or fight, but she slowly learns that his strength lies elsewhere. Scout is an energetic and outspoken child. She prefers trousers to dresses and fights easily when insulted. Yem, who is 4 years older, is more reflective but still enjoys childhood adventures. Each summer, their world expands with the arrival of Dill Harris, a small imaginative boy visiting his aunt next door. Dill fills their days with stories, games, and curiosity, especially about the house of Arthur Radley, known as Boo Radley. Boo Radley becomes the center of childhood fascination. He never comes outside and rumors paint him as a monster. People say he eats raw animals and prowls at night. Scout admits they imagined him as 6.5 feet tall with frightening features. The children invent games where they act out Boo's life, even though Atticus repeatedly warns them to stop. He tells them that Boo has the right to privacy and that you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. When Scout starts school, her innocence meets rigid authority. Her teacher criticizes her for already knowing how to read, even though Atticus taught her at home. Scout struggles to understand why learning is treated as a problem. Through school, she begins to learn about Macomb's social divisions. Some families are poor but proud, like the Cunninghams, who never take what they cannot repay. Others, like the Ewells, are poor and dishonest, yet still considered superior to black citizens simply because they are white. The calm rhythm of childhood changes when Atticus agrees to defend Tom Robinson, a black man accused of raping a white woman. Myella Ewell. Atticus knows this case will bring trouble. He tells Scout that he could not hold his head up in town or teach his children right from wrong if he refused. He explains that the one thing that does not abide by majority rule, a person's conscience. News of the case spreads quickly. People begin to insult Atticus and his children. Scout is called names at school and in the street. At first she reacts with her fists, but Atticus urges her to keep her temper. He tells her that most people, not bad, they are just blind to their own cruelty. Yim becomes more affected than Scout. He believes deeply in fairness and is shocked that adults can behave so hatefully. One of the most important lessons Atticus teaches comes through the idea of the mockingbird. He tells his children that it's a sin to kill a mockingbird because mockingbirds do nothing but make music. They harm no one. This idea becomes symbolic. Innocent people who do no harm should not be destroyed by society. This symbol quietly prepares the reader for what is to come. As the trial approaches, tension grows. One night, Atticus leaves home with his car and sits outside the jail where Tom Robinson is being held. Yim, Scout, and Dill follow him. A group of men arrive, intending to lynch Tom. Atticus stands calmly in front of the jail door. Scout, unaware of the danger, recognizes one of the men as a Cunningham and begins speaking to him about his son. Her innocent conversation reminds him of his humanity, The men leave, ashamed. Scout later realizes this was a moment where childish innocence prevented violence. The trial takes place in a crowded courtroom. Scout and Yem sit in the balcony with the black community. The atmosphere is tense. The Yules testify first. Bob Yule is aggressive and rude. Myella Yule appears frightened and lonely. Adikus treats her with politeness, calling her Miss Myella, which confuses and engages her because she has never been treated with respect. Adikus carefully exposes the weakness of the case. He shows that Myella's injuries were on the right side of her face and suggests that she was beaten by someone left-handed. Bobule is left-handed. Tom Robinson's left arm is useless due to an accident. Tom testifies calmly and respectfully. He explains that he often helped Myella out of kindness. He admits that he felt sorry for her. This honesty costs him dearly. In Macomb's racist society, a black man is not allowed to pity a white woman. In his closing speech, Adikus appeals to reason and justice. He reminds the jury that in the name of God, do your duty. He argues that the case is built on lies and racial prejudice. Yem is confident the jury will acquit Tom. He believes the truth has been made clear. The verdict is guilty. The decision devastates Yem. He cannot understand how people could ignore the evidence. Scout does not fully grasp it yet, but she feels the injustice. When Adikus walks out of the courtroom, the black community stands in respect. Reverend Sykes tells Scout to stand because your father's passing. This quiet moment shows where true moral dignity lies. After the trial, life does not return to normal. Tom Robinson later tries to escape from prison and is shot dead. Adikus believes Tom lost hope. His death reinforces the idea of the Mockingbird. An innocent man is destroyed not because of guilt, but because of fear and prejudice. Bobule, humiliated during the trial, seeks revenge. He threatens Adikus and harasses others connected to the case. Adikus believes Yule is only making noise and is not truly dangerous. This is one of the few times Adikus underestimates evil. Meanwhile, Yem and Scout continue to grow. Yem becomes more withdrawn and thoughtful. Scout slowly learns restraint. Boo Radley remains a mystery. Though small gifts appear in a tree for the children, these gifts show quiet kindness. When the tree is cemented shut by Boo's brother, the children sense that Boo is being silenced. On Halloween night, Scout and Yem attend a school pageant. Scout wears a large ham costume. Walking home through the dark woods, they are attacked. Yem's arm is broken. Scout is trapped in her costume. Someone saves them. Bobule is killed in the struggle. Back home, Scout finally meets Boo Radley. He is shy, pale and gentle. He is nothing like the monster of childhood stories. Scout realizes how wrong they were. Sheriff Tate decides to say Bobule fell on his knife. Adikus hesitates, but Scout understands. Exposing Boo would harm an innocent man. She finally understands the meaning of the Mockingbird. Scout walks Boo home and stands on his porch. For the first time, she sees Macomb from his perspective. She understands Atticus's lesson about empathy. The story ends quietly, with Adikus reading beside Yem's bed. Scout falls asleep knowing the world is imperfect, but that goodness still exists. Discussion of the four major events in To Kill a Mockingbird 1. Adikus Finch's decision to defend Tom Robinson. Adikus Finch's decision to defend Tom Robinson forms the moral foundation of To Kill a Mockingbird and sets the main conflict of the novel in motion. When Adikus accepts the case, he is fully aware of the hostility it will bring upon him and his family. Macomb is a deeply racist town where a black man accused of raping a white woman is almost automatically assumed to be guilty. Adikus understands that the case is unlikely to be won, not because of lack of evidence, but because prejudice will outweigh reason. Nevertheless, he accepts the responsibility because his conscience demands it. He explains to Scout that if he did not defend Tom, he couldn't hold up his head in town and would not be able to teach his children what it truly means to live rightly. This moment establishes Adikus as a man guided by principle rather than popularity. Atticus's choice reveals his belief that morality is personal and non-negotiable. He does not see justice as something that should change according to public opinion. For him, the law must be defended even when society refuses to respect it. By taking Tom's case, Atticus chooses to stand alone against the values of his community. This decision reflects the novel's wider message that true courage lies not in physical strength, but in moral endurance. Atticus demonstrates this when he tells Yem that courage is when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and you see it through no matter what. The consequences of Atticus's decision quickly spread to his children. Scout is insulted at school and called names because of her father's actions. Yem becomes angry, confused and increasingly withdrawn as he begins to understand the seriousness of the situation. These experiences force both children to confront the cruelty of prejudice at a young age. Through this, Harper Lee shows that racism does not only harm its direct victims, but also poisons the moral development of society as a whole. Atticus prepares Scout for this reality by warning her that many people are blinded by bias, saying that people generally see what they look for and hear what they listen for. This advice highlights how prejudice shapes perception and prevents truth from being recognized. Atticus's decision also introduces the novel's central theme of standing up for justice in an unjust world. He does not attempt to protect his children from discomfort or disappointment. Instead, he allows them to witness injustice firsthand, believing that moral understanding must come through experience. His quiet strength and consistency provide a moral compass for Scout and Yem, even when the world around them fails. By defending Tom Robinson, Atticus teaches his children that doing what is right is more important than being liked. This lesson becomes one of the most enduring messages of the novel. 2. The confrontation at the jailhouse. The confrontation at the jailhouse is one of the most intense and revealing scenes in To Kill a Mockingbird. It takes place on the night before Tom Robinson's trial, when Atticus positions himself outside the jail to protect Tom from a lynch mob. This act alone demonstrates Atticus's quiet courage. He knows the danger he faces, yet he chooses to rely on calm presence rather than force or aggression. His decision to sit alone outside the jail reflects his belief that violence should never be met with violence, and that moral authority is stronger than physical power. When the mob arrives, the situation becomes extremely tense. The men are determined to take Tom and are prepared to use violence. Atticus stands in front of the jail door and refuses to move. He does not threaten them or raise his voice. Instead, he addresses them politely and firmly, insisting that Tom will face trial in the proper way. Scout later realizes that Atticus was in deadly danger, even though he never showed fear. This contrast between Atticus's calm behavior and the mob's aggression highlights his moral strength. He is willing to risk his life for justice, not dramatically, but quietly and steadily. The turning point of the scene comes through Scout's innocent intervention. Unaware of the full danger, Scout recognizes Mr. Cunningham and begins to speak to him about his son and his personal struggles. She talks to him as a neighbor, not as an enemy. This simple conversation breaks the spell of mob mentality. Mr. Cunningham is reminded that he is an individual with responsibilities and relationships, not just part of an angry crowd. The narrator later reflects that a gang of wild animals can be stopped, simply because they're still human. This moment reveals the power of empathy to restore humanity in situations driven by hatred. The jailhouse scene contrasts childhood innocence with adult cruelty. Scout does not understand racism or mob violence in the way adults do, and this innocence becomes her strength. While the men are driven by fear and prejudice, Scout appeals to shared humanity. Harper Lee suggests that racism thrives when people stop seeing each other as individuals. By restoring that personal connection, Scout unintentionally saves Tom's life and her father's. This event is crucial because it shows that moral courage can take different forms. Atticus's courage is steady and principled, while Scout's is unconscious and instinctive. Together, they demonstrate that justice is protected not only by laws, but by human compassion. The jailhouse confrontation deepens the novel's exploration of empathy and reinforces the idea that understanding others is the first step towards challenging injustice. 3. The Trial of Tom Robinson. The trial of Tom Robinson is the central event in To Kill a Mockingbird and the moment when the novel's themes of racism, justice, and moral courage are most clearly exposed. It takes place in the courthouse at Macomb and draws almost the entire town, revealing how deeply racial prejudice is woven into the community's social fabric. For Scout and Yem, the trial is more than a legal proceeding. It is a painful lesson about how the world truly works. Through careful narration, Harper Lee shows that the courtroom, which should represent fairness and truth, instead reflects the biases and fears of a society outside it. From the beginning of the trial, the imbalance of power is obvious. Tom Robinson, a black man, stands accused of raping Myella Ewell, a poor white woman. In Macomb's rigid racial hierarchy, this accusation alone almost guarantees his guilt in the eyes of the townspeople. Atticus Finch, however, approaches the case with calm logic and respect for the law. He does not rely on emotional outbursts or dramatic performances. Instead, he uses evidence, careful questioning, and reason to expose the weaknesses in the Ewell's story. His quiet confidence contrasts sharply with the hostility and prejudice surrounding the case. One of the most important moments in the trial occurs when Atticus examines the physical evidence of Myella's injuries. He establishes that Myella was beaten on the right side of her face. From this detail, Atticus draws a simple but powerful conclusion: the attacker must have been left-handed. He then asks Bob Ewell to write his name, proving to the court that Bob is left-handed. This moment is crucial because it introduces reasonable doubt. Atticus then points out that Tom Robinson's left arm is crippled and useless. Scout observes that Tom's arm hung dead at his side, making it physically impossible for him to have inflicted the injuries described. This evidence alone should have cleared Tom, yet the court remains unmoved, revealing that facts mean little when prejudice controls judgment. Tom Robinson's testimony is one of the most tragic moments in the novel. He speaks politely and honestly, showing respect to the court despite the injustice he faces. Tom explains that he often helped Myella Ewell with chores because she asked him to. He did not ask for payment and expected nothing in return. His reason for helping her is simple and humane. He says that he felt sorry for her. This statement shocks the courtroom and changes the atmosphere of the trial. In Macomb's racist society, a black man is not allowed to feel sympathy for a white woman. By admitting this, Tom unknowingly condemns himself. His honesty becomes a weapon used against him. Through Tom's testimony, Atticus reveals the deeper truth behind the accusation. Myella Ewell is shown to be lonely, abused, and desperate for affection. Her life is marked by poverty, neglect, and violence from her father. When she tries to kiss Tom, she breaks a powerful social rule. When Bob Ewell discovers her, Myella panics. To avoid punishment and shame, she accuses Tom of rape. Atticus exposes this hidden crime, not as rape, but as the breaking of a racial and social code. He makes it clear that Myella is both victim and accuser, trapped by the same system that destroys Tom. Bob Ewell's testimony further weakens the prosecution's case. He is aggressive, disrespectful, and unreliable. His hatred for black people is obvious, and his behavior in court reveals his violent nature. He openly admits to beating Myella, though he denies causing her injuries that night. His arrogance and cruelty stand in sharp contrast to Tom Robinson's calm dignity. Yet the court chooses to believe Bob Ewell because he is white. This decision highlights the moral corruption of a society where truth is secondary to race. Atticus's closing speech is the moral heart of the novel. In this speech, he strips away emotion and prejudice and appeals directly to the jury's sense of justice. He reminds them that the case should not be decided by fear or tradition, but by evidence and reason. He argues that the assumption that all black men lie or are immoral is false and dangerous. Atticus famously states that in our courts all men are created equal. This line echoes the language of democracy and the American Constitution, exposing the hypocrisy of a nation that claims equality while practicing discrimination. Atticus urges the jury to rise above the racism of their society and deliver a verdict based on truth. He speaks not only for Tom Robinson, but for the idea of justice itself. For a brief moment, there is hope. The courtroom falls silent, and even the children sense the weight of what is at stake. Scout believes that Atticus has won the case because the evidence is so clear. Yim shares this belief, holding tightly to his faith in fairness and reason. The verdict, however, destroys that faith. After long deliberation, the jury finds Tom Robinson guilty. This outcome confirms that racism is stronger than truth in Macomb. Yim is devastated. He cries and repeatedly says, "It ain't right." This simple statement captures the moral shock of the moment. For Yim, the trial marks the end of childhood innocence. He realizes that the justice system can fail, not because of lack of evidence, but because of hatred and fear. The trial's aftermath deepens its tragedy. Although Tom's conviction is appealed, he later attempts to escape from prison and is shot dead. This event reinforces the idea that there is no safe space for a black man falsely accused in a racist society. The trial, therefore, is not just a courtroom episode. It is a symbol of systemic injustice, showing how institutions meant to protect the innocent can become tools of oppression. Through the trial of Tom Robinson, Harper Lee exposes the moral contradictions of Macomb and challenges the reader to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice and justice. The event shapes Scout and Yim's moral growth and confirms Atticus Finch as a figure of integrity and courage. Above all, the trial demonstrates that innocence alone is not enough in a society ruled by racial bias. Justice, like the Mockingbird, is fragile and easily destroyed. 4. The attack on Yim and Scout and the revelation of Boo Radley. The attack on Yim and Scout on Halloween night is the final major event in To Kill a Mockingbird and brings together the novel's central ideas about innocence, violence, and moral understanding. After the trial of Tom Robinson, Bobule remains consumed by bitterness and humiliation. His public exposure in court damages his pride, and instead of accepting responsibility for his actions, he chooses revenge. Rather than confronting Atticus directly, Bobule targets Atticus's children, revealing his cowardice and cruelty. This attack represents the lingering danger of unchecked hatred and shows how prejudice can continue to harm even after the courtroom drama has ended. On the night of the school pageant, Yim and Scout walk home alone in the dark. Scout is dressed in a heavy ham costume, which restricts her movement and vision. This costume symbolizes her vulnerability and innocence. Suddenly, they are attacked. Yim struggles to protect Scout, but he is overpowered, and his arm is broken during the fight. Scout, trapped inside her costume, can hear the sounds of violence, but cannot see clearly. The confusion and fear of the moment emphasize how defenseless the children are. In this chaos, an unknown figure intervenes and rescues them. Bobule is killed in the struggle, bringing an end to his reign of hatred. When Scout returns home, she finally meets Boo Radley face to face. Throughout the novel, Boo has been treated as a terrifying mystery, the subject of rumors and childish imagination. However, Scout is surprised to see that Boo is not frightening at all. He is quiet, pale, and painfully shy. In this moment, Scout realizes how wrong her childhood fears were. Boo is not a monster but a gentle and protective person who has been watching over the children for years. This revelation forces Scout to reassess her earlier judgments and understand how easily fear can be created by ignorance. The aftermath of the attack raises an important moral dilemma. Sheriff Tate decides to report Bobule's death as an accident, explaining that Bob fell on his knife. His decision is not meant to deceive, but to protect Boo Radley from public attention and legal trouble. Atticus initially struggles with this choice because he believes strongly in honesty and the rule of law. However, Scout understands the deeper moral truth. She explains that exposing Boo to the town's curiosity and judgment would be like shooting a mockingbird. This shows Scout's moral growth and her complete understanding of the novel's central symbol, which represents innocent beings harmed by cruelty. The final moment of the novel occurs when Scout stands on Boo Radley's porch and looks out at the neighborhood from his point of view. She imagines the events of the story as Boo must have seen them and finally understands Oedipus's lesson that you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. This moment represents the triumph of empathy over fear and ignorance. The novel ends on a quiet, hopeful note, suggesting that understanding and compassion, though fragile, can still overcome hatred and injustice.